Hi, my name is Alan Court from Kittywinkle Centres in New Zealand. Welcome to our Building Kids for Greatness podcast series, where we have had the pleasure of interviewing some wonderful New Zealanders, including New Zealand TV icon Susie Cato, former All Black captain Sam Cane, and New Zealand Black Sticks Olympian Jamie Claxton. Today, we welcome someone who has been shaping conversations around children, families, and well-being in New Zealand for decades and has clients all over the globe. Sarah Chatwin is a registered psychologist, mind coach, and one of New Zealand's most trusted voices when it comes to understanding children and families. Many of you will know Sarah from her decade as a resident psychologist on TVNZ's The Good Morning Show, and also her 5 years on TV3's The Cafe. And we hear her wisdom on the radio and through national media. In fact, Sarah was the first psychologist on TV in New Zealand. Sarah works with individuals, families, and sports people in an effort to offer people tips and strategies to be happy, rounded, and grounded. It is a great privilege to introduce you to Sarah.
Hello, Alan.
And a very warm welcome to you.
Some lovely words there, but you do make me sound so old.
Well, you're not at all.
It's been a few decades.
You're not at all. There's no stopping that process. Sarah, when we talk about school readiness,
yes,
what do most parents think that means, and what does it actually mean?
Well, it's interesting because you did send through a little bit of a brief for me to cast my eye over before this podcast. So I did do a little bit of homework, even though I am busy, and I know you're busy too. And something dawned on me that I hadn't thought about for a long time, because I actually have 4 children. So I have been involved in the parenting gig for a while myself personally. And I guess I'm not sure that parents would understand or acknowledge, particularly when you're in it, at ground zero, that, parenting, when you are parenting, it's like navigating uncharted territory. However, your children from 0 to 5 are in your home, the home that a parent, guardians, caregivers provide. And that is the first educational context, if you like to think about it that way. I mean, did you ever think about it that way? Because I remember that I did, but I guess I never put a lot of emphasis on the fact that as a parent, I was providing each one of my children with the very first educational context. So when you and I had, formally discussed readiness for school and readiness for early child care environments and things like that, I mean, it's a big responsibility, isn't it, parenting between, say, 0 and 3 specifically, because, children are often absolutely just in homes with their parents, or they're coming and going, in a small fashion, but the parents are providing, the essence of what learning looks like in those environments that the children will be entering into at, say, 2.5, 3, 5, or whenever a parent chooses to, place their child in a setting of that sort. So I thought that was a really interesting concept. As parents, we are the architects of the destiny of our children, and we provide that very first educational context. I kind of like it.
And certainly with the first child, I mean, that's one of the hard ones, because there's no real book, because every experience is different as a new parent, but it's really putting our beliefs, and I suppose we can instill a lot of our beliefs in the children, and it's hopefully those beliefs and the way of bringing up a child are the correct ways to ensure that the child is emotionally balanced.
That's right. Well, in fact, as parents, and when we are providing that first environment or educational environment or context for our children, in those early years, that is when values take root, when the foundations are laid for children to see how relationships play out, all kinds of relationships, sibling relationships, parental relationships, child-parent relationships. And through daily interaction with parents, things that might seem really ordinary can be quite transformative. teaching your child to say please and thank you, so that when they actually do enter, you know, an ECE or a preschool, a kindergarten, any form of early childcare, and then school, they know those things, you know, manners, emotional regulation. All of this happens in that home environment when you have children looking to their parents for guidance, looking to their parents as role models. So again, yeah, the word responsibility keeps coming up for me.
And Sarah, I heard you just a couple of weeks ago on News Talk ZB speaking
Yes.
with Heather du Plessis-Allen, and it was about how children are arriving at primary school. And from what you're seeing in schools and family, and from research that has come out, what are the most common social or emotional gaps children are having when they arrive at school?
I was actually really perplexed by some of the research that came out that showed that you know, children couldn't identify people calling their name. They had no ideas about what letters made up their name. They didn't have a good handle on cleanliness, self-regulation in terms of toileting. There wasn't a lot of knowledge about, you know, basic levels of, I guess, interaction in a social setting, ways of getting through, you know, just those environments where their parents aren't around, and being comfortable in those settings. I was really alarmed by what the research was showing us, and the lessons that perhaps weren't being taught in the home, and the lack of interface between parents and their children with regard to, you know, just giving their kids a few clues as to that next step. So yeah, I found it really alarming. And somebody, you know, suggested that, okay, it's only a very small percentage of kids. I don't really care. It's still happening, and it's still alarming. So there is a group out there, or several groups out there, for whatever reason, are actually not disseminating the information through from themselves to their kids, or giving their children the opportunity to learn such important lessons, you know, about toileting, about being comfortable in a space that isn't your home, understanding your name, understanding, you know, pretty basic social mores, and things that children need to function in a context like an ECE or a school comfortably, and not feel insecure or anxious. So I guess
Now,
that was troubling for me to see those statistics, and to hear about some of the examples of, you know, teachers calling a child's name and literally standing in front of a child, and the child did not recognize their name and couldn't identify even one letter in their name. So yeah, I guess I think back to my own parenting, which was not perfect by any means, and the parenting examples that I see around me, and that's, you know, that's really sad and troubling.
and it's, you know, we really notice it in the early learning environment when a child may have been at home for the first 3 years and they have had no social interaction, or the only social interaction have been with family who might not have been giving them the correct or may not have been present in a lot of the communication. So there's already a gap sometimes when children arrive at early learning. And I can just see the massive gap if a child actually doesn't go through early learning and arrive straight at primary school.
Well, there would be a massive gap. And, you know, you are in the industry. So far be it from me to say this isn't happening, because clearly the research is saying there are gaps. There are kids falling through these nets, and you in your industry and your co-workers and colleagues are seeing this, you know, front of house. So it is troubling, as I mentioned before. And I also think that in that 0 to 5 age group, you know, you are looking at things that are essential for kids to pick up as soon as they can. So I'm talking, and I'm a little bit of a manners, you know, I put a bit of an emphasis on manners, because I think, going back to the old adage, and it's a very old adage, you know, manners maketh the man or woman, or person. And, you know, so in that 0 to 5, the transmission of manners and skills around courtesy, around understanding other people's boundaries. Children are needing to learn about work ethic And who better to teach them about work ethic than their parents, who may or, have worked or still be working to a certain extent. So you've got manners, you've got courtesy, you've got work ethic, you've got lessons in gratitude and appreciation. I mean, we want our kids to be able to appreciate what they have in their lives and to look at the beauty of things. So gratitude and appreciation. In that 0 to 5, children, need to be learning about self-worth, decent morals. So there's a lot that a parent, just by virtue of being a good role model and a good example, just by virtue of taking a few moments consistently and reliably to pass on some information. There's a lot that parents can pass on. And I think, Ellen, you'd say it would be very helpful for parents to pass that kind of information on. And I mean, that wasn't the whole list. It's a little exhaustive, really. I mean, parents can
No,
teach
what you've touched on is so important, and it's
Yes.
not something that is done in isolation. It is not something that happens at home and that's it. And then they come to early learning and they run around and cause riot. That should not happen.
No.
And what they learn in an early learning environment, you want the child to be able to display those characters, because you're actually building foundations for life. You're actually building social skills for life.
And I think the gap that we're seeing is perhaps parents are not understanding the importance of their role. The 0 to say, the 0 to 3. Well, there aren't a lot of people necessarily around in that child's life other than parents and family. I'm correct in that. And so as a parent, as a caregiver, you are incredibly important in terms of disseminating the information that those children need, to feel the benefit of that and to be able to move in another context, an early childhood context, a school context, with some skills that serve them so well with other people, not just their family. But I guess if parents aren't looking at that, if they perhaps are not giving of themselves and giving a little bit of time to that. And I mean, I'm not suggesting that in a 24-hour day you're giving 23 hours to it. I'm suggesting that with a nice pattern and routine and consistent messaging, you can set up 30 minutes, 2 hours, however much time you've got to pass on some of this very important information that helps people like you, Ellen, your colleagues, and then, students in the school, teachers, and everybody in those, contexts that the kids are put in, further down the track.
Well, I do see it as a parent's responsibility to provide that, to actually work with their child, because the child can't do it by themselves. So,
No.
So they need that guidance. Why does a child's ability to manage their emotions make such a difference when it comes to learning?
Because I think that we all have a lot of emotions. There are a lot of emotions that we can experience, but experiencing an emotion and then behaving in a certain way, well, they're two different things. And emotional regulation, is really important for children to learn, because you can feel anger, you can feel frustration, but it is not acceptable in any environment to aggress, to injure, to act in a way that means that you are stepping into somebody's space in a negative way, or you are hurting people. So, emotional regulation is a fundamental, I would think, for parents to pass on to their kids. I mean, when your toddler has a meltdown in a shop or a grocery store, your very calm response teaches them more about emotional regulation in that moment than any children's book will teach you. So as a parent, you are there, first and foremost, to be a guide and an example to your child. I mean, children potentially need to learn that all emotions are there and they're all acceptable, but not all behaviors are appropriate. As again, I mentioned, you can feel anger, but you don't need to hit. You can be frustrated, but you don't need to lash out or kick or berate another person or throw things if we're talking about very small children. So emotional regulation is a key concept that parents have hold of probably well before anybody else in a child's life. And emotional regulation develops slowly and over many years, just as teaching our children to say please and thank you and manners often develops slowly and over many years of being consistent and repetitious with regard to your messaging. Because kids get frustrated, they get angry, but they must not hit, they must not injure, they must not hurt. They must understand what that emotion means and what it is, and then how to regulate it.
So when a child cannot regulate their emotion, what's going on with them is they actually don't know what they don't know. Is that correct?
Say, so yes, yeah, I would say that at some level, the messaging from parents has not got through. It hasn't been consistently they haven't been faced with it consistently or religiously. So perhaps it's been fed to them, messaging's been fed to them in a piecemeal fashion. So there's a little bit of margin for error. So I think children that perhaps cannot emotionally regulate, they haven't necessarily had good examples. Perhaps even Ellen, and I think our, child abuse statistics would support this. Perhaps a lot of children have had very, very bad examples of parental emotional regulation or lack of it. So I just feel that when you have a child that is, you've got a continuum, Ellen, you've got, good, excellent at one end, really poor at the other, and everything in between. So if you have a child that is very, very poorly emotionally regulating, there's going to be, and I don't like to use this term all the time because it means we can't nail it down to one thing, but there's going to be a multiplicity of factors that have added to that equation, to that final, equation. And one of them will be that the messaging is not consistent. Perhaps parents haven't put in enough time, in the early years just to get that sorted out and to start that journey for the child where they, where the child is able to take a little bit of time, sit with that feeling of anger, but not behave in a way that's unacceptable. Then perhaps you add in a parent who is quite an angry parent and doesn't emotionally regulate well themselves. So they are actually showing the child an example that isn't that great. So there's a multiplicity of factors. And if you see a young child particularly acting like that, it's worth a little bit of focus to see exactly where that's coming from or what the factors are that are contributing to that behaviour.
How critical are the years from birth to 5 in shaping a child's long-term confidence and resilience?
Well, of course, you'd have people like Freud, who are very, very, very much deceased and ancient now, who would say those first 3 years are absolutely the most important. I think we have come to realize that, there's genetics, there's environment, and a lot of things that go on across the lifespan that shape us. But I've got to say those early years are so important, and important in all the ways that we've already mentioned, in setting boundaries, in giving children the guidance that they need to be decent, in creating values that children, even if they do wander from and helix in and out from across the lifespan, values that they inevitably come back to, values of kindness, of consideration, of integrity, of empathy, those great core values that we would like everybody to, embody these days. And sometimes we don't see a lot of these. So I would say those early years are so important. And I guess for me, it's often sad seeing parents perhaps not understand the importance of being present. And that doesn't mean having to be at home all the time. That's not what I'm saying. Being present in those moments, if even they're micro moments with your child, giving them some of your time. I mean, we have a lot of hours in a day and we have a lot of days in a week, and a lot of hours in a week. And if we actually set aside time to instill some of these things, these good learnings, and pass on lessons that were important to us and that perhaps shaped us positively, our children would greatly benefit from that. But short answer to your question, look, those early years are really important, really important.
Do social and emotional skills develop naturally, or through just having a loving environment, or do they need to be intentionally taught and then reinforced over time?
Okay, so I'm a little bit of an interactionist on this one. I think you've got genetics and you've got environment. So sometimes you just come with a little bit of wiring. You're hardwired a certain way when you're born, and there will be things, and we say things all the time, I have 4 children. One of them reminds me of my mum in terms of what she does. And, you see those little genetic quirks that show up in our kids. They're often lovely, sometimes confronting. But, so there's that. Then there's the environment that we provide for our children. And I know that when I was looking over the research in prep for this conversation, Alan, I took it very seriously.
Thank you.
Your child's inner voice forms primarily through their interactions with you, with the parent. Your child's inner voice forms primarily with you. So a lot of what you see your children, giving back to you is potentially what you have put out to them. So be very aware of that. I remember a marvelous advertising campaign that was many, many years ago. And I was very young, Alan. And on our screen, we would see this ad that said, if you want your children to behave yourself. So I remember thinking that is so important that, we try our best. And of course, we don't always get it right. And nobody's perfect. And perfection is hard. And who really wants to carry that rod on their back? But we do, having an awareness of how you are showing up as a parent is just so important, because you are shaping their socio-emotional growth, their ability to cope, their resilience. You are that person as a parent. And certainly, Alan, I would go on to say that, wonderful teachers and early child carers become very important people to these children too. And, these children that come from hopefully a home where parents have invested a little bit of time and energy into teaching those skills that get them to you guys and then beyond to school. These kids are looking at all of these adults, and hopefully these, all of you in your position and teachers in their position and parents are providing the example that just lets kids know that whilst we're human and we do make mistakes, there are things that we need to know and things that we need to be kind, caring, honest, reliable, responsible. And that means when kids can embody that and learn those things from parents and early child carers and school teachers, they're just lovely people. They go on to provide a generation of kindness and care and make a few mistakes along the way. And that's okay if we can get it sorted out. But socio-emotional development comes from, in the initial stages, from the home. If there is no kindness or care, if there is abuse or domestic violence, that's what is shaping what these children are seeing, is what is shaping their behaviors, their actions, and their worldview. So yeah, it's important to remember that.
I think if there can be an alignment between what happens in the family and what happens in an early learning centre, I think that's a fantastic ingredient for a good outcome. I am very, very passionate about social development. We've got a program called Climb to Confidence, where we are teaching the basic social skills for a 4-year-old, and it may be being empathic, it may be sitting on the mat for a certain period of time, playing with friends, knowing how to go to the bathroom, how to write your name, all the things that will set them up so they are ready for their first year at school. And I believe it's so important that we're actually winding it back. So there's the Climb to Confidence starts from basically babies, which is just really feeling wanted and knowing trust and everything else, and building each year. So by the time they reach primary school, they have social skills, they are set, because social skills are things that live with them for life if you get those basic foundations in place.
Well, I think that, these are things that we need to live a really happy and comfortable life. If we do not have social skills, it's very hard to operate in the world and to understand people and be understood. It is also perhaps why people are anxious, because ignorance is definitely not bliss. Ignorance promotes anxiety. So when people do not know how to act or to function, or what is expected of them, or perhaps what can help them in situations, I mean, that leaves a person, a child, a young person, a teenager, in a space of unknowing and in a very uncomfortable space. So those skills are so important. It's lovely to hear that. I'll pick up on something that you said about having that nice interface between your environment, the early childhood environment, and what parents are bringing to the table. It's well worth parents doing their due diligence with regard to what facility works for them and their children, and whether the values align, because that is so neat. If you've got parents coming to your kind of a facility, having done, some of that work, and their child is in a good space, but also for the parent finding a facility that, just dovetails beautifully with their values, and then you have that growth, don't you, of what the parents have initiated here, and moving forward to the school environment. So I love that. And you mentioned some fabulous things, about making kids feel loved and wanted and seen and heard. All very basic, isn't it? Love.
It's a very basic thing, but it's what
So
our
important.
values are as a centre, and what it actually does concern me. I see a lot of centres throughout New Zealand. A lot are doing a great job, but a lot, what I would say, not providing the child the best environment. And it's what I always say to our parents is that we're on this journey with you. It's not your child goes home and that's the end of it. It's a building, and it's something where they build on their learnings from day to day, and just including the whānau and everything is in their development. Is just it makes me very passionate about it. So yeah.
Sounds like it, Alan. But again, coming back to that point of due diligence, because that is just an incredible situation when you have parents and child carers, schools working on the same page. It provides the child with such good coverage of all those lovely things that they need. The learning about gratitude and appreciation and empathy and tolerance of others. And so when it is essential that people look to people like you and centres that create these meaningful environments that teach such lovely values. I don't know about you, Ellen, but today, particularly with social media, I scratch my head a bit about social media and the availability of everything for children without parents, knowing too much about what's going on. I see our values taking a bit of a hit, and it's sad. And I was always very passionate about that for my children: manners, values, kindness, care, and just paying that forward, because it has that flow over to other people and other children and other families. And it's very important. And unfortunately today, I'm not so sure that, apart from your centres and probably some others in the country and some other programs that are very good, we are seeing, the erosion of really good directions, positive values, and some of the things that make humans good people.
And what you say is 100% correct. And it's the life skills, and that's why it's just so important that we can do something. We can make a difference to families and their young children. So if a parent listening is thinking, okay, this sounds all very good, but my child actually struggles socially, and they obviously may not be at our centre. What would you say to reassure the parent, and what's perhaps one practical step that the parent could take to assist their child who is struggling socially?
Well, I think that a parent who is picking up on that is obviously a parent that has their eye on that, which is lovely, because it's first and foremost, being present for our children, understanding their situation, talking to them about their situation. So for a parent who's going, boy, I'm a little bit concerned about my child in a social setting, and I'm feeling a little bit off about this, that's great, because you're identifying an area that perhaps needs a little more examination and needs to be popped under the microscope for a wee check, just to see that things are flowing properly. And I always say to parents, if you have a gut on something, trust your gut. You are the parent of that child. With that comes, or I like to think, would come a sense of confidence about knowing your child. I put a bit of time and energy into being there, just not saying too much, but listening to my children, hearing them and understanding where they were at. I didn't have a lot. My children are in their 20s, and I have one teenager at the moment who's just left school. So they're not at the 0 to 5 level. And of course, I wasn't competing with social media and all the rest of it. But I think if you are a parent identifying that something's going on socially or in that social context for your child, stop. I'd like to come up with something that was similar to stop, drop and roll, but I can't come up with something quickly. But it would be, stop, look and listen. Take a look at your children, listen to what they're saying, invite a conversation around, what's going on. And you can do that even with, 2 to 5s, by using those very concrete, simple, conversation segues. If the child is looking sad, you go, oh, you look a bit sad, how are you doing today? And you just give them a little bit of time to understand their situation. You could then also ask, if your child was in a centre, such as yours, Ellen, you could ask the teachers to have a little bit of a look and see what their view of the behavior is, so that you could get together and have a little bit of a think tank about pathways forward for a child that's struggling in that situation. What I will say is, don't leave your fears unchecked or your concerns unchecked. You do not have to stay grounded in a space of feeling insecure or uncomfortable with what's going on with your child. Ask some questions. Ellen, for a lot of people, they might find it easy to present to their GP, or, to ring a health professional just to get an idea. For a lot of people, they might, ring a line or a service or go to a health professional such as myself, a psychologist, a counsellor, to get some advice. Asking other parents with children, in a group or at a centre is always helpful. I always suggest to people, just as a tip, just as a suggestion, don't be alone in those fears or those concerns. Sort them out, talk to people, get the advice from people that you trust. It might be initially a family member or a GP or a health professional that you have a relationship with, but don't stay stuck in that place of unknowing or that fear or that concern. Look at it. And if you have got a gut that something is, not quite right or a little bit off for your child, as a parent, I would say trust that feeling and go with it. Do some work and just look to it. As children get older, then you can advance conversations and create those beautiful pathways where you allow the child to come to you and talk about, whatever they want to talk about, and you just listen, and then you synthesize it and put a bit of a plan together with them.
I think that's very sound advice, and what you mentioned, don't do it alone. You don't need to do it alone. As I said before, we're on the journey. The parent doesn't need to walk the journey by themselves with their child. If they reach out to people like yourselves who can give them help, there's a lot of people who can actually assist them, and in so doing, assist the child in their development. Sarah, I just have one more question, because I know you're extremely busy. If centres actually made social and emotional development a visible, intentional part of everyday learning, would that change how ready children are when they start school?
I
And
would love
already,
that.
what did
I
you
would
say?
love
So,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
because at the
I
moment,
would love that.
no, the ministry has got, Ministry of Education has got something called Ko Whiti Whakapai,
Yes.
which is based on social development, which I think is fantastic. It is an online resource. What I'm saying, rather than online, if you actually have a visual, something that people relate to every day, do you think that would be something that would be advantageous to children and families?
I do think it would be advantageous. I mean, I'm sure that a few families have, or many families have accessed the online material if they know about it. But, you know, that's a small window. We need, I would love that stuff to be more accessible to everyone, because, you know, when you make information accessible, by virtue of, you know, percentages, you will get a percentage of people that wouldn't just access it online, who are able to access that information, and that you draw attention to those kind of things, you know, emotional regulation, resilience, how people interact, boundary setting. I mean, all of that stuff, the stuff that we started this conversation with. I just think that when you put it out there, it shows people that it's something for them to look at. So it underscores or underlines the importance of that stuff. And then I think perhaps we're moving towards creating individuals right from the get-go, right from those very early ages, who are so aware that this stuff is important, and it makes people feel happier and less anxious in this world, because they find that people are kind and people are caring and people have empathy and people understand them and they are understood and they are seen and they are heard. So all of that stuff, yeah, I would love that. And just by having conversations like this, Ellen, to be fair, putting this kind of information up on a podcast and having people like me or anybody else like me, psychologists, counselors, people with, you know, who are trying, as I do, to give nice, positive options and views to people. I think that it makes people sit up and listen and go, yeah, that'd be really cool. We should work towards that. And that, you know, parents sitting at home that might see this or hear conversations or see that online material and know that they're not alone, and know that there are people out there that want a better world than this, and a great world for our children, a world where children don't feel that they have to attempt suicide or go down that track because they're so unhappy. A world where when children are using social media, they don't feel that they need to be liked and have all these likes to feel meaningful. They have the ability to just work it through, and they have the resilience to, you know, ebb and flow. And I think it would be lovely. That's just a personal view, but I have all of this information that we have talked through in this podcast. I mean, I've got to say, I've done a lot of it with my kids, and they're quite nice people. I have 4 pretty nice human beings. And people say to me, Sarah, you need to write books. And I say, do you know what? I haven't had the time because I've generally been parenting and working. But
Well,
I'd love that stuff to be in the regular, you know, out there for everybody to enjoy.
well, your children are obviously a credit to you. Sarah, you're such a font of knowledge, and as soon as I heard you on the radio, I thought I need to connect with you. So and anyone else can connect on a professional basis with Sarah on mindcoach.co.nz.
No, it's mindworks.co.nz.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Well, thank you for
That's
picking me up on that.
I
You
will
see, we
definitely
don't
pick
get
you
it
up on
right
that.
all the time.
I am a mind coach. I get called that a lot in the media, but it's Mindworks, mindworks.co.nz. And yeah, I'm always happy to help out, pitch in. If I'm not working and parenting, I'm working and parenting. But I took some time out for you, Ellen, and I do seminars, and my practice is, yeah, it's a bit kind of international now, with a few clients across the ditch in America and Europe. So it's growing, and hopefully the really positive messaging is getting out there to people. But I'm always up for a chat, as my name would suggest, Sarah Chatwin.
Well, we're privileged to have you on the podcast. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And I'd like to connect it sometime in the future again.
Lovely. Thank you, Ellen, and
Thank you.
good luck with your projects. It sounds fabulous. Well done.
Thank you.